not the best policy for this White House. Here with reaction, former Florida Congressman Allen West. You know, I have two kids. My kids, they get in a little bit of trouble here and there, Congressman, and when they get in trouble, that's fine. But if they lie about it, that's when they get in really big trouble. The president straight out lied to the American people. Nobody in the media with a support level of 6% seems to care but me, I guess.
Well, Sean, it's great to be with you. And one of the things that I learned in the time I was in the military, and I teach my two daughters, 19 and 16, is that character means doing what is right when no one is watching. And once you sacrifice your integrity, it's very hard to regain it. And I think that you saw that in this instance where it was a political game. It was not being honest and upfront with the American people. And when you talk about the American people hurting, you know, we know that household incomes are down 3.6%. That's one of the highest rates in about 20 to 25 years. We have seen gasoline prices increase by about 46 to 47 cents over the last 35 days. So you are really decimating the hard-earned money and incomes of the American people that are out there working. And yet we continue to hear about, you know, drawing in more money from the quote-unquote those that can afford to pay a little more. That's at a 30-year high already. And so we're not talking about pro-growth economic policies. We're talking about political gamesmanship and an ideology that is working adversely to us turn around this economy.
You know, I wonder, is it a fair game to say that maybe the president, we could save 341 federal workers from being furloughed if he didn't take that golf trip to go play golf with Tiger Woods down in Florida? The State Department spent nearly $500 million on climate change. How many poor children or disabled children, to use the president's word, could we help? Are these legitimate debates we ought to be having? He says we're going to hurt poor children or disabled children. So if we're going to spend money on climate change, I'd rather help the little children, wouldn't you?
Well, absolutely right. And when you look at the amount of redundant and duplicative programs in Washington, D.C., that's a great place to start. The GAO put out a report back in 2011 that said there's $200 to $300 billion of redundant programs in Washington, D.C. That could have been a perfect place to start. And when I was up there in Congress, we did pass two pieces of legislation to replace the sequester, good, common sense, targeted type of spending cuts that reformed the programs that we had. And, of course, those pieces of legislation just sat on Harry Reid's desk. So there have been solutions that are being offered. But to continue to talk about more tax revenue and more increases as far as taxation, the CBO has already said we're going to have $2 trillion of revenue this year, and that's a pretty high bit of revenue coming in, but we're still going to run close to an $800 to $900 billion deficit because it's a spending issue.
You know, there's this economist, I saw this in the Blaze, and his name is Drunken Miller, whatever
Yes.
his name is. He actually made a pretty dire prediction when he talks about the $211 trillion that we have in unfunded liabilities that are coming up. I mean, this is why Republicans, they say, all right, Paul Ryan's going to come out with a budget to balance the budget in 10 years. I want to see that budget, because we can't borrow 46 cents of every dollar and not rob our kids blind. And he says, look, he thinks for him it's a simple issue here, and that is, I'm not against seniors. What I'm against is current seniors stealing from future seniors. Is that a reality that's coming to America, or does austerity like we see in Europe come here first?
Well, it's an absolute reality when you understand that every man, woman, and child in the United States of America has about $53,000 of debt on their head, gross debt, and that is the gross debt. That's not the unfunded liabilities that are brought in. So I'm just talking about the $16.5 trillion. So we are abusing our, younger generations for, the now. When you look at Social Security, Medicare, we have to reform those programs or they will go bankrupt. But last week we should have paid attention to what Ben Bernanke, he testified that you're going to continue to have federal stimulus because our economy is not recovering. We're not doing the right things as far as our fiscal policies and our regulatory policies. So we're printing money to the tunes of about $85 billion a month so that we can, buy up our mortgage-backed securities and Treasury bond debt. And that is not how we're going to have a successful economy.
Is this a case where the president's cried wolf now too often? Remember he was pushing a stimulus plan, or we face catastrophe. I mean, this is the type of language now that is fairly predictable, and I'm getting to the point where I laugh at it. Even Saturday Night Live is mocking him over this. It's made it into the pop culture, which I think is a dangerous position for him to be in, because things don't get better in the end. But in other words, if we hit Obama scare fatigue, that he can't scare us anymore because everybody knows he's kind of full of it?
Well, I'll ask you a simple question. If you were in the military and you were in a platoon, would you follow a platoon leader that said, gentlemen, we're going to try to do this attack, but most of us are going to get killed, and those of us that don't get killed are going to be severely wounded or captured? You know, leadership by fear-mongering is a tactic, but is not a very successful tactic. And eventually it does erode your credibility because people are going to start looking at you as crying wolf too much.
I'd be a little nervous if the platoon was led by Governor Andrew Cuomo, because he probably would only allocate 7 bullets in your gun, and that would be problematic if you're fighting the bad guys.
Absolutely problematic, but these are the type of solutions you get from people that really don't understand basic fundamental and principles of leadership: courage, competence, commitment, conviction, and character especially.
All right. Good to see you, Congressman. Are you going to run again, do you think? Have you thought about it?
Well, I run every morning about 5 or 6 miles.
I mean run for office.
Well, you know, God orders my steps, and so I will listen and be obedient to him. But right now, I have a great platform to get out our conservative message.
Colonel Allen.